If you've been messing around with Bond decks for Set 6 EX1 format, then you've probably come into the deck building conundrum of which searchers should I be playing. You have so many options, from Stravimon to Promo Gabumon to the new EX1 Gabumon and Agumons. Then you have your tamer searchers like Davis and Analog Boy. There's just a lot of different options, and it's definitely hard to tell which ones are better than the others. And even when you're playing, sometimes one card feels good and the other feels bad, or it could be the opposite on any other given day. So I decided to just dive right into it, look up some stats, get the old hypergeometric calculator out, and make a video. So let's get right into it. Why do you play searchers in Bond decks? Well, first of all, most of these searchers are able to search out tamers, and Takamiya and Matt Ishida from BT6 are pretty much the key cards in these decks, since they are rookie rush style decks that don't gather resources from digivolving or cycling their decks. They really rely on the memory gain and draw effect from these tamers in order to keep up in tempo and resources with other more traditional decks. And these cards need to be seen as early as possible in order for you to be able to keep up and eventually see your win conditions and not get grinded out to like 2 or 3 cards in hand with nothing to do. So for that reason, we run cards such as Promo Gabumon or BT1 Augment, etc., etc. We'll get into all the other searches that you can run. Not to mention that these searches can also hit other valuable cards in these decks, like for example hybrid cards, which you can use to get in extra attacks and go for game, or even some of your other tamers like Davis and Marcus, which are still pretty useful in your game plan. So first of all, we're going to start with your hybrid searchers from BT4. This is Flameon and Stravimon. These are on play, reveal top 3, and add 1 hybrid and or 1 tamer of the respective card's color. So these cards have more targets than just the regular search top 5 and add 1 tamer, since you can hit a tamer or a hybrid. Typically speaking, a Bond deck will run 7 tamers, 6 to 7 tamers, and they'll run 5 to 8 hybrids. And then also with these cards, you can actually double hit, since it says and or. If you hit a tamer and a hybrid in your 3 that you reveal, then you can add both of them to your hand, which is really, really strong. Unfortunately, these cards aren't Gabumons or Agumons, so you can't warp over them. That definitely comes up. Sometimes you're stuck with only a Stravimon or a Flameon, and you can't use the Bond of Friendships or Bond of Braveries in your hand. And you also can't get your Matt Ishida or Takamiya effects when you come out of raising, if this is what you're raising with, which hopefully you don't have to do that, but at least you already saw your Matt or Tai. So that kind of mitigates having to do this, but it still feels kind of bad. All right. For our other searcher options, we have our Agumon from BT1 or P042 Promo Gabumon, which comes with buying BT6, I believe. So these are on play, reveal the top 5, and then add 1 tamer, and then send the rest to the bottom of your deck. These cards only usually have 7 targets, so it's 4 Matt, 3 Davis, or 4 Tai, 2 to 3 Marcus, so 6 to 7 targets. The pros of these cards, obviously, is that you can dig 5, so that's pretty deep into your deck, all things considered. A lot of other searchers mostly only search top 3. And these are also Agumon and Gabumon cards, so they count for your tamer effects, and you could warp over them. But the con is actually that it reveals top 5. So there's actually a pretty high chance of bot decking cards that you need to see, such as options or Digimon. And we've all been in the situation where we play one of these and then it sends to the bottom of our deck our Bond that we needed. It sends to the bottom of the deck Hammer Spark. It sends to the bottom of the deck Tamer, or not a Tamer, a Hybrid. So these cards can be very, very hit or miss, and actually the stats do prove it, and we'll go into that in a second. And we also have our new inheritable searchers from EX1. These are both give inheritable when attacking, reveal top 3, and then add 1 Agumon/Gabumon or 1 tamer of any color, doesn't specify, to your hand. So the pros of these cards is it actually has the most targets available, since it hits any Agumon or Gabumon and any tamer. So you're usually running anywhere from like 13 to 15 Agu Gabus, and you're usually running anywhere from 6 to 7 tamers. And then if you're running Analog Boy, that's even more. So you usually have at least 20 targets to hit with these cards, so they can actually hit pretty often. The con of this card is obviously that it's an inheritable effect, which makes it a lot slower than the on-play level 3s. And it's a when attacking trigger, so that means you have to risk level 4 or higher Digimon into your opponent's security in order to trigger this effect. And even if it lives, they have a chance to kill it by either running over it or using an effect on it. But on the other hand, if it does happen to live and they don't have an add to it, you can use this effect again. So these are very interesting cards. I do think they're worthwhile. We'll get into it in a second. And finally, we have these are non-tamer searchers, so Analog Youth and Memory Boost only search Digimon. However, that is a worthwhile effect in these decks, since it does allow you to boost consistency, search for your 3 or 4 copies of your bond that you're running, or search for hybrids and enable hybrids. So for Analog Youth, the pros are that it only costs 2 memory. It's a tamer, so the memory gain effect can't be blocked by memory blockers, and those are very prevalent this format. By memory blocker, of course, I mean Gazimon, Terriermon, Madoki Betamon. I think that's it. If I'm missing one, then I don't know. You can add any Digimon with this card. It's a tamer, so it's searchable by EX1 Agu Gabu and the Tamer Searcher Agu Gabu. It can combo with the bond self-deletion effects. So what you can basically do is, let's say you're at 3 memory and then you have an Analog Youth out. You can warp into a bond, pay 3 memory, so you're at 0. Do your bond thing, swing, attack, whatever, and then end your turn. The bond will die, and then you can trigger Analog Boy to tap it, hatch, gain a memory. So normally you would pass your opponent 3, but in this case you would only be passing your opponent 2. Furthermore, if you, instead of just ending your turn and passing, let's say you're playing blue and you end your turn with an Ice Wall, so you pass your opponent 1 memory, then your bond dies, you tap Analog, you gain a memory, you go to 0, still your turn. And then you can play another Digimon, etc. to continue and build on your plays. And then it also has very high synergy with Skull Greymon and EX1, the purple card that digivolves over red or purple. That one kills itself when attacking, so that will allow you to trigger Analog Youth and hatch to an empty Digi hatching zone, and then you can digivolve a level 3 down there and threaten another bond in next turn. Very, very powerful effect, very high synergy, and it gives you a lot of tempo if you can start chaining these Skull Greymon effects. The cons of Analog Youth, however, are that it can only hit Digimon, so you can mill tamers or options, and that hurts really bad, especially in the early game when you are looking for a tamer and you don't have one. If you happen to play an Analog Youth and then you mill one of your tamers, you're feeling super, super bad about it. And also, the memory gain effect is highly conditional. You can pretty much only get it off when your bond dies, or if you are running Skull Greymon. You don't really run any other level 5s or higher outside of those cards. Then we have red or blue memory boost. These reveal top 4 instead of top 3, so you reveal 1 more card over Analog. You can add any Digimon, and then it has the delay effect. So any turn after you play this card, you can trash the card from your field, and then you gain 2 memory. So this is a powerful effect because 2 memory is the exact amount you need in order to play a Gunimon or Lobomon from your hand, and hybrids for game is a very powerful play, as we all know, and the 2 memory can also let you extend plays in other ways. However, the cons are, of course, you can bot deck tamers and options. There's 1 more potential to whiff since you're looking for 4. Delay can be blocked, so Terriermon, Gazimon, Madoki Betamon can all screw over these cards, and it costs 3 to play, so 1 more than Analog Youth. So these cards kind of occupy similar niches. I do think that one is better than the other, and of course we will get into that shortly. All right, so let's get into the math of things, starting off first with Stravimon. For these cards, I'm going to be using like standard ratios. So if these aren't your ratios, I'm sorry. This is just like what I see most commonly played. And, you know, I can't look up every ratio, or this video would be like 3 hours long, and we're not going to do that. It would have also taken me like 3 days to make this video, and I'm not going to do that. So let's just start off with typical ratios for blue hybrid tamers. So usually running 2 Stravimon, 4 Lobomon, 2 Kendo Garurumon, 3 Davis in format, so for a total of 15 hits. And as always, when we do these hypergeometric calculations, we have to start off with how likely one of these is to end up in your security, since the first 5 cards you draw from the top of your deck go to your security. All right, so in this case, let's see here. Our chance of hitting one of these cards in security is to hit 1 exactly, 37%, greater than 1, 85% basically. So what I did is I ran 2 just because this probability was so high. So chance for there to be 2 of these cards in your security is 32%. And then for there to be greater than 2 is 47%. So that kind of cuts that ratio in half. So I didn't really move on from here. So basically on average, we can kind of assume that you're probably going to have at least one of these cards in your security. So we're kind of going to move forward in this video making that assumption. All right. So, and also for arguments and simplicity's sake, we are going to assume that we are going first. So 5 cards in our hand, and 1 target is in our security, like I just said, and all the other viable targets are still in my deck. All right. So this is literally like I drew a Stravimon and no tamers and no hybrids, and there's maybe 1 tamer and or hybrid in my security. So that's the game state that we're going with here. All right, so we're going to look at 3 probabilities based on the game state. There's the chance to hit only a tamer off your Stravimon. All right, so there's 7 tamers in your deck, but we're assuming you lose 1 to security, so 6 targets. Second probability is your chance to hit only a hybrid. So you run 8 hybrids, right? So 2 Stravies, 4 Lobos, 2 Kendos. But since you are playing a Stravie, then it counts for itself. So we have to reduce 2, right? So you lose 1 to security, then the Stravie that you are playing. So therefore there's 6 targets left in your deck. All right. And then your chance to hit either 1 tamer or 1 hybrid, right? So you just want to hit 1 card, but you don't care what kind of card it is. All right, so for hitting only a tamer or only a hybrid, since there's 6 targets of each, it's going to be the same probability. It's going to be 30%. 30% to hit exactly 1, 35% to hit 1 or more. So 30%, give or take, right? And then the chance of hitting any 1 target, so 13 targets. So you play a Stravimon and you don't care if you hit a hybrid or a tamer, you just want to hit 1 of them, then there is a 45% chance of hitting 1, 65% chance of hitting greater than 1. So since you don't care if you hit more than 1, that's okay. We're going to go with that percentage, so 65%. Pretty good. So over half of the time, you are going to hit off of Stravimon. That's better than a coin flip. So that's pretty fair, I think, for a searcher. Okay, and lastly, what we want to look at here is, since these cards can double hit, you can hit both a tamer and a hybrid and add them both to your hand. We're going to look at the probability of that. All right, and the way we do that is that we multiply the probability of each. All right, and then since they were both 6 targets, they have the same probability of approximately 31%. Then we multiply those 2 probabilities together, and we come out with about a 9% chance of double hitting with the Stravimon you play on turn 1. That approximates about 1 in every 10 games, or occurring about once in your typical 3 or 4 round local, right? So let's assume 3 rounds, you go to 3 games each round, that's 3, 6, 9 games. If you go to 4 rounds, then it's 12 games. So this math pretty much adds up, give or take. So about once per locals, your Stravimon is going to double hit. Kind of crazy, right? But on the other hand, the chance to hit once at all is 65. So that's pretty good. And you also have to keep into consideration that we are only doing first turn probabilities. So the longer the game goes without you seeing a tamer or a hybrid, so your deck is getting smaller as you draw, then the Stravimon becomes more effective because there's less other cards in your deck diluting the probabilities. So it's 9% or more, essentially. Okay, then let's go into Flameon. Flameon is going to be a little worse than Stravimon just because the deck building constraints of the Agumon deck means that they don't play as many hybrids. There are builds that do play hybrids, like a higher hybrid package, but I don't really consider those standard. So instead, we're going to go with a conservative hybrid package. So you play 2 Flameon, 4 Gunimon, and then 2 Marcus and 4 Tai. You can make an argument for 3 Marcus, but I think a lot of people have actually been cutting it to 2 lately, especially since it's definitely not as good as Davis. Unfortunately, blue definitely gets the better card in this scenario. So again, let's do likelihood of one of these being in security. For there to be exactly 1, 40%, 1 or more, 76%. So we ran 2. Probability of there being 2, 26%. Greater than 2, 34%, so we kind of just cut it off there. Again, we can probably assume that there's going to be one of these in your security. And I think just from experience, if you guys have been playing, then that holds up to be true. All right, so then we're going to look at your odds of hitting only a tamer. So 6 targets. I think in this case, actually, I left all 6 in the deck since it was like 5% less chance of there being one in your securities. And then it's just like just different numbers that we can go off of to change it up from the Stravimon numbers. Chance of hitting only a hybrid. So there's the 2 Flameons themselves, and then a Gunimon. So that's 6 targets, and then I did you have to subtract the Flameon itself, so 5 targets, and then assuming 1 is in security, 4 targets. All right, so that's how we get to that. And then chance of hitting 1 of either target, so 11 targets, should be 10, but we can just pretend one of those wasn't in security. All right, so hitting only 1 tamer, 30% or 35% to hit 1 or more. So 30% about. Hitting only a hybrid, 23% to hit 1, 24% to hit greater than 1, essentially the same, 23%. And then chance of hitting 1 of either, 43% to hit exactly 1, and 57% to hit more than 1. All right, so, and remember, you can't add 2 tamers or 2 hybrids. It has to be 1 of each. So that's why this number is going to be significantly higher than the double hit percentage, which is going to be about 8%. So 1% lower than Stravimon, which makes sense since we play less hits with Flameon in this version of the deck. Now, if you were to run, let's say, a more hybrid-oriented Agumon deck, let's say you run the 2 Flameon, 4 Gunimon, and then you play 1 or 2 copies of Burning Greymon, and then 1 to 2 copies of a Gunimon, then you can probably make a stronger argument for running Flameon in your deck. However, the problem with that is that you're giving up slots for other much more powerful cards that Agumon can be running. So in this case, you would be giving up either Promo Greymon or Geo Greymon slots to run Burning Greymon, which actually isn't a Greymon. There's like some weird translation effect, and that's why you see on a lot of red cards the except for Burning Greymon, Doru Greymon, or Dex Doru Greymon tag. So you can't activate tie effect off of Burning Greymon or Marcus effect off Burning Greymon. That's a huge con to that card, unfortunately. And if you're running Aldemon, then you are giving up on running Skull Greymon from EX1, and I think that card is actually insane. So running Aldemon over that card is very, very questionable. So I think for Agumon, we probably give up on the Flameon package, and we kind of just give up on Flameon in general. Whereas there's a much bigger argument to be made for Stravimon being good in Gabumon decks, regardless of if you're running the Ancient Garurumon package or not. All right, so then moving forward, let's move on to the BT1 Augment / Promo Gabumon. These are the search top 5, add 1 tamer to your hand. Okay, so again, we start off with the chances of there being a tamer in security. So let's see, for format 3 Davis ratio, there is about a 40% chance of there being 1 of these, 54% chance of there being 1 or more of these. So we moved on to if there was 2, 12% chance of there being 2 of these in security, 13% chance of there being greater than 2 of these. So this is significantly lower than there being 1. Same deal for Tai 2 Marcus, pretty much, minus a couple points. I believe it's about 2% less likely here just because you're running the 1 less Marcus. So for argument's sake, we're just going to say that there is 1 in every 2 games you will see 1 tamer in your security, right? I think that's a fair assumption. All right, so then moving on, we're going to assume that all valid targets are in the deck, and we are going to assume that 1 target ended up in security. So we're going to run probabilities for both of those scenarios. All right, so we'll start off with format 3 Davis. None of them ended up in your security, so all 7 cards are still in your deck. There is a 42% chance that you see exactly 1 tamer when you look at top 5. We're not really concerned with that stat, so we're only going to look at hitting 1 or more, since that's okay in this scenario. 58% chance, 59% chance really, that you will hit 1 or more tamers when you play BT1 Augment or Promo Gabumons turn 1. All right. Moving on to for Tai 2 Marcus, all of them are in your deck, or format 3 Davis, there's 1 in your security. So in such 6 tamers in your deck ratio probability, it's going to be 52% chance of hitting with Agu or Gabu in this scenario. And then we're going to do 5 tamers in your deck. So you're playing 4 Tai 2 Marcus and there's 1 in security, or you're playing format 3 Davis and there's 2 in your security. All right, so in that case, there is a 46% chance of you hitting 1 or more tamers with your Agu or Gabu. Okay, so we can pretty much approximate that to meaning that you will hit with this card on turn 1 about 50% of the time, or 1 in every 2 games. It's a coin flip. It's literally a coin flip card. Okay, however, you have to keep in mind the opportunity cost of their search effect. There is a 41 to 53% chance that you hit 0 targets with this card. Okay, so what does that mean? That means you're sending 5 Digimon or options to the bottom of your deck that may have been useful to you. And I know we've all been in the situation where you play one of these cards, you completely whiffed, and then you send to the bottom of your deck Bond of Friendship, Lobomon, Hammer Spark, Ice Wall, and a Gabumon that you needed. Super insane. Like, these cards, you're essentially coin flipping on whether you're going to hit a tamer or mill 5 cards. And I think when you put it like that, you can really see that these cards don't have as much perceived value. Sure, hitting your tamer is important in this deck, but at what cost, considering you have other options that can also search tamers with less of a drawback. So I think for that reason, I'm going to say that these cards are actually not worth playing in your deck anymore, especially considering the fact that in EX1, we were introduced to the new Agumon and Gabumon inheritables, and I think these cards are actually decent. All right, so we're going to look at the chance of hitting a tamer or a chance of hitting a Agumon or Gabumon off their effects, because remember, it's search top 3 when attacking, and then add either a tamer of any color or an Agumon or a Gabumon respectively. All right, and then since this is an inheritable when attacking effect, we have to assume that the earliest you can get this effect off is on your 2nd turn. So that means we have to account for 1 extra turn draw and 2 extra draws for digivolving into the card itself. So egg to level 3, draw a card, level 3 to level 4, draw a card, and then obviously when turn passes over to you, you draw a card for turn. That's 3 cards. That means the largest size our deck can be when using these effects is 42. So we're going to base our numbers off of that. For simplicity's sake, we're going to assume that there are 6 tamer targets still in the deck, and that there are 16 Agumon or Gabumon targets. So we're basing that on an average of most people playing 13 Agu Gabus. So usually it's anywhere between 12 and 14. So we're just going to split the difference and say 13. And 4 bonds, since bonds are Agumons or Gabumons, they count for this effect. And we have to reduce 1 since you have the EX searcher itself. That is, it searches the same deal with the Stravimon. Since it searches itself, we have to discount itself since we're using that effect. So that card is not in our deck, obviously. All right, so let me move my face so you guys can see a little better here. Chances of hitting a tamer greater than or equal to 1, 37, 38%. Chances of hitting an Agumon or a Gabumon greater than 1, 77%. Okay, so that's a very, very high chance of hitting a Digimon, and it's significantly less than half, 30, 38, we'll round it up, we'll say 40% chance of hitting a tamer with this effect. Important to note with this effect, though, is that since it's a one attacking effect and tied to a Digimon, you can use it again. So if your attacker lives and your opponent doesn't remove it on their turn, and you get to attack again with that Digimon, your chance of hitting with the effect increases by at least 4%. So this takes into account that you missed with your first attack. So your deck is 3 cards lighter because you had to send 3 to the bottom that weren't a hit. And also takes into account your turn draw since the turn passed back over to you. So your deck is at least 4 cards smaller. And of course, we're not taking into account any other draws you may have done for other Digivolves, any other mills from other search effects you play, draws from your Upamon or Koromon, etc. So just in a vacuum, if you can resolve this effect twice and you didn't hit the first time or the second time, each subsequent attack, you increase your chance of hitting by 4%. Something to keep in mind, and I think these cards are actually good. So since it's only look at top 3, you're not milling a shitload of cards like you are with the Tamer only searchers, and you have a very high chance of hitting a Digimon with these cards anyways. So I think your chances of just pure whiffing are pretty low, and the upside is fairly high. All right, so moving on from Tamer searchers, we're going to look at Digimon Only searchers, Analog, Youth, and Memory Boosts. So for all intensive purposes here, Analog, Youth, and Davis both essentially reveal top 3 and add 1 Digimon, since Davis can't double hit in Gabumon since they don't play any green Digimon. So we're basically going to consider them to be the same card in this scenario. And then we're also going to assume standard bond ratios of 16 rookies, 11 champions, and 4 bonds for 31 valid targets in the deck. And I'm going to spare you the charts I did for these since it's just like too much information all at once, and we're just trying to move on to like how effective these cards are at hitting targets. It's going to be about 3 to 4 Digimon in your security on average. I think that's a fair assumption, and from experience, we can all agree that that's pretty much correct. And then for argument's sake, let's see, I lost my place here. Okay, yeah, so it's going to be 28 Digimon in your deck then, right? Because you lose, so 31, you lose 3 to security, 28 cards in your deck. Then we draw 5 cards, and then statistically speaking, there's going to be about 3 to 4 Digimon in your hand is the most likely number. So we're just going to assume 3 Digimon again, leaving 25 Digimon in your deck. So your hand is going to be like 3 Digimon, an Analog Boy, or a Memory Boost, and some other random Tamer or option card. All right, that's the situation we're going to use. All right, so for Analog and Davis, so since they search top 3, there is a 91% chance of them hitting 1 or more Digimon in the search. So 91% chance of hitting it all. Very, very good. And then we look at Memory Boost, 96% chance of hitting 1 or more. Very, very good as well. It's actually only 5% better than Analog and Davis for 1 card more deeper. Okay, so what does this mean? Well, honestly, they're both pretty statistically similar. I think since they're both over 90% chance to hit, the 5% in favor of Memory Boost I think is pretty negligible. At that point, like the 5% doesn't matter since it's still over 90% for both. So we're really looking at what the secondary effects of these cards are. So Analog is you get the cool combo synergies with the Bond When Dying and Skull Greymon stuff. And then it's also a tamer, so it can't be memory blocked. And for Memory Boost, it's a lot less of a conditional memory gain. However, it can be blocked, and you have to use delay. I think in pretty much every scenario, considering the pros and cons of both of these cards and considering that the search is pretty much statistically equivalent, I'm going to say that you should pretty much always be running Analog Youth over Memory Boosts in your deck. Just I think the upside from the potential combos with the synergies is too high, and because it is a tamer and it can't be memory blocked, I think that's very valuable in this meta, since any deck that can run Gazi or Madoki, especially if you consider the Gabumon mirror, is running them. So being able to get around that is very effective. Okay, so this finally, we're going to sum everything up, have it all on one page, so that way it's not like you have to go back in the video and try to find what I was talking about. For Stravimon, you have a 36% chance to hit a tamer, 36% chance to hit a hybrid, a 65% chance to hit one of either, and a 9% chance to double hit. For Flameon, it's a 35% chance to hit a tamer, 25% chance to hit a hybrid, 58% chance to hit one of either, and an 8% chance to double hit. For BT1 Augment or Promo Gabumons, there is a 46 to 58% chance to hit a tamer, depending on the amount in your security. We split the difference, and we're just going to say it's a 50% chance, so it's a coin flip if you hit or not, basically. EX1 Augment Gabu, 38% chance to hit a tamer, 78% chance to hit a Digimon. Your chance increases by at least 4% for each subsequent trigger that you manage to pull off, and your chance to hit a tamer increases if you're running Analog Boy, which if you have the space where I recommend you do. And finally, with Analog Boy or Davis, 91% chance to hit a Digimon, and for Red or Blue Memory Boost, 96% chance to hit a Digimon. Alright, so what conclusions can we draw from this? What is the most mathematically correct to play your Bond deck? Well, for one, I'm going to say that the BT1 Augment and the Promo Gabumons are not worth. Do not spend $15 to buy Promo Gabumons. You don't need them. They're not that good. The coin flip is too much of a risk. It's like you hit a tamer or you mill 5 cards in a deck that you don't want to be milling in. Not a worthwhile effect, in my opinion. Stravimon, still surprisingly good in your Gabumon deck, even if you're not running the full Ancient Garuru hybrid package, because the deck indexes on Lobomon and because Kendo Garurumon actually has a good effect. So you actually do run that card, and you actually do want to see your Davises as well, then this card goes up in value by a lot. So I think Stravimon is still a worthwhile card to be playing in your Gabumon deck. Con, it's not a Gabumon, but I think the upside is worth its consideration at 2 copies at least, maybe even 3. All right, especially if you're running more Kendos. So if you're like a 3 Kendo build, 4 Lobo, 3 Kendo, maybe you want to justify 3 Stravimons as well. Flameon, not as worth an Augubond because the opportunity cost of running a higher hybrid package is pretty heavy. Burning Greymon, simply not as good as Kendo Garurumon. It's a nice beat stick, but that's about it. It doesn't have a cool removal effect like Kendo does, so it's a lot less useful. Aldemon outclassed by Skull Greymon currently, so there really isn't any reason to be running anything outside of your 4 Agunimons, which means Flameon loses value in Agubond decks, so I can't really recommend running this card in your red bond. The new EX1 searches are good. Your chance to hit a Digimon is pretty high, and as a bonus, your chance to hit a Tamer is about 30%, so it's not nothing. It's not great, but it's not nothing. And if your card manages to live and you can swing with it again, then you have a higher chance of getting value off of it. So you are at the very least adding an extra Digimon to your hand every turn. So that's a worthwhile effect, I think, and worth running at least 3 copies. And finally, if you are still running Memory Boosts in your deck, you should take them out for Analog Boy. I think Analog Boy does the same exact thing, but the effect has a lot higher synergy with what the Bond decks are trying to do. And you can make some cool plays with it, and with the Bond deletion and the Skull Greymon deletion, and it can't be blocked by memory blockers. So that is very high value in and of itself. Alright guys, so I hope this helped you make some decision about what cards to be playing in your Bond decks. if you just want me to say straight up what I think you should be playing in Gabumon, I think it's probably 2 to 3 Stravimons, 4 Lobumons for sure, 2 to 3 Kendos, and then you want 3 Davis, 4 Mats, and probably like 1 to 2 copies of Analog Boy if you can find the room for them and you don't want to use those slots for maybe some more removal options. In your Agumon deck, I think you don't run BT1 Augment and you don't run Flameon. Instead, you index more on the plus 2000 inheritable Agumons. You index more on the, I think the 2 cost 4000 DP Agumon is worthwhile just because it lets you choke memory. I think you index more into your Promo Gabumons and your Geo Greymons. So your level 4 lineup should probably be like 4 Promo Greymon, 3 to 4 Agunimon, and 3 to 4 Geo Greymons, and maybe like some other tech level 4s like Norimon you can consider, or the BT5 Greymon that is one to Digivolve you can consider. The EX1 searchers, I think in both Gabumon and Agumon, you can justify running at least 3 to 4 I think is good, and I think running less than that is probably not good since these really do up the consistency of your deck. And finally, definitely play Analog Boy. Alright, so hope you guys learned something. Like I said, going hard on the EX1 content, more videos to come. GG's.